Hi everyone, I'm Adam Riskin from Revelwood, and welcome to our webinar today on saving time on accounting tasks and processes using BlackLine. A few words about Revelwood. So we've been working with finance and accounting teams for over 25 years, and we've worked with a very large number of companies in that time span, well over 500. This requires us to be not just technologists, but also able to talk the talk of finance and accounting. Most of our staff are former accountants or former finance managers that decided to move into the technology world. And it allows us to speak the language of our customers and offer them more than just a technology implementation. Revelwood focuses on 4 products. IBM Planning Analytics and Workday Adaptive Planning are both budgeting, forecasting, and reporting type solutions. Fluence is a financial consolidation solution. And of course, BlackLine, which automates accounting processes. So if you think about how accounting and finance operates in most businesses, there's a monthly cycle that includes planning, closing the books, consolidating, and reporting and analyzing. And automation can be applied to all those activities. And the solutions Revelwood supports covers that entire scope of work. So let's face it, most people are using Excel to do many of those activities manually. And many of them feel like this hamster on a wheel. Our intention with automation, and specifically BlackLine, is to help you get out of this wheel, allowing you to spend more time on value-add activities. So the agenda for today's webinar, first, I'll talk about the challenges with doing accounting tasks manually today. Then I'll cover BlackLine as a company and the different software modules that they offer. And then after that, I'll do a deep dive into the 3 main software modules that can be used by almost all accounting departments. I'll spend about 30 minutes showing you the actual software and examples of how it works. Okay, all right, so for many accounting teams, most tasks are done manually in Excel today. These are things like reconciling bank statements, balance sheet reconciliations, or creating accrual and amortization schedules. And Excel is a great tool and helps to complete these tasks. But even with all its great features, it still has limitations. You still have to manually key in amounts and make sure that formulas don't break. You got to make sure your amounts always tie back to the general ledger. And maybe most importantly, tasks can still take a very long time to complete, even though you're using Excel. And once you're done doing all this work for the month, you have to do it all over again the following month. So for most organizations, we find continuing to complete accounting tasks manually in Excel, it just isn't sustainable. And why isn't it sustainable? Well, it really boils down to 4 things: time, risk, cost, and morale. The number one reason by far that manual accounting processes aren't sustainable is the time your team must dedicate to complete them. It becomes a bottleneck towards completing other requirements downstream, like closing your books or sending out financial statements or letting your finance team begin the review and analysis. The second reason it's not sustainable is risk. So it's really easy to make a mistake when you're doing accounting tasks manually in Excel. Amounts can be entered incorrectly and formulas can break. And it leads to increasing your risk of things like inaccurate financial reports or completing tasks after its deadline, or possibly not completing tasks at all because it was missed. The third reason manual accounting processes aren't sustainable is that there's a huge cost to it. When your processes are manual, they require people to do them, and people need to be paid. So if your company is growing or have an increase in projects or workload, you have no choice but to hire more people to handle the additional workload. And that's just going to drive up your costs. And lastly, the fourth reason is it just causes low morale. For some accountants, the manual repetitive tasks can wear them down. And when that starts occurring, turnover starts to increase, which now forces the management team to spend time on recruiting, interviewing, and training. So the idea here is to try and increase the capacity of your existing staff and resources using a tool like BlackLine. We all have a finite number of hours in a day, and many companies spend most of their time on the regular monthly and quarterly and year-end tasks. And this limits the time you could spend on bigger projects and initiatives. You may need to do things like provide better data analytics, train your workforce, or even upgrade your ERP system. But a lot of times those projects get shelved because there just isn't enough time to do it. So if you could use a software like BlackLine to reduce your manual processes, you'll have more time and capacity to do those more value-add activities. So a little bit about BlackLine as a company. They specialize in software for accounting. It's all they do. Almost all their time and resources are dedicated to it. They've been around for a long time. They are publicly traded, so you can find a lot of financial and operational information about them on the internet. So in a nutshell, they have a huge number of users, huge customer base across the globe, and they're recognized as one of the best in the industry. So this slide represents many of the software modules that BlackLine offers. And you'll notice at the bottom, 3 modules classified as core. The account reconciliation module. Okay, this is the module that you can use to automate your balance sheet reconciliations. The next one you see is the transaction matching module. That lets you match records from multiple data sources. The most common example here is being used for bank reconciliations. And the third module is for task management. So this is the module where you can create checklists, like your month-end close checklist. Now, BlackLine calls these modules core because they studied their existing customer base and found almost all their customers use them. So what they did is they created a starter bundle offering for new customers. It consists of 3 core modules and can be implemented in just 2 to 3 months. So it gets you the software you truly need and using it quickly. And I'm going to cover these modules in much more detail in a bit. Now, you'll see other modules represented here up top. They have one module to help out with managing journal entries. So that allows you to create, approve, and post entries from within BlackLine. You got another module to help manage your income statement variance analysis. They have a cash application module that can reconcile customer payments to invoices and automates the accounts receivable process. And then they have other modules as well that help to track intercompany transactions and do consolidations and manage compliance. So the suggested approach for new customers is really to start off with the 3 core modules. You'll be up and running quickly. And after you've been using them for a bit, then add on these additional top modules as needed. But it's just a suggested approach. Each company has different needs. And if your company needs to mix and match on day 1, we're happy to do that. Okay, so let's get into the software. Let's take a look at the first core module, the account reconciliation module. It's the module you'll use to do your balance sheet reconciliations. So this is a flow chart of how balance sheet reconciliations work in BlackLine. The black box in the middle, that represents the actual reconciliation itself. The blue box on top represents information you enter into a rec when it's first set up. So you'll enter things like an explanation on why it's being done and step-by-step instructions of how to complete the rec and all the workflow details like who's the preparer, approver, and reviewer. The blue boxes on the left represents information that gets entered when completing the rec. So it'll be things like your GL balance, which will be imported from your ERP system, the bank and subledger balances, which can be imported or manually entered. And you'll enter all your supporting items and schedules, attach all supporting documents, and key in any notes or comments. Now, once all that information is entered, you have 2 options to mark that reconciliation as complete. And that's represented by the right side of this flowchart. The first option is using BlackLine's auto certification rules, and I'll talk more about that in a later slide. The second is the workflow method, where a preparer is going to mark the reconciliation as complete, then an approver, reviewer, or whoever else you wish downstream will sign off on it. So let's take a look at some reconciliations within the system. I created a video that walks you through several examples. So this is our BlackLine demonstration system, and I'm logged in as Kim Wilson. She's an accountant that's responsible for preparing balance sheet reconciliations. And in my demo environment, the current fiscal month is June 2021, which is shown up here. So the first thing she sees after logging in is a dashboard with the number of reconciliations she's responsible for preparing and the number of recs by workflow status. So in this example, her dashboard shows that she's responsible for 74 balance sheet recs in total, 13 key accounts and 61 non-key accounts. 53 of her recs haven't been started yet, and that's represented here. 2 of her recs are completed. That's represented by this number over here. And the remaining 19 reconciliations are in progress, somewhere within the workflow process. I'm not going to go through what each of these workflow statuses mean today. It's probably more detail than I want to get into. But the idea here is that Kim can quickly see the number of reconciliations she's responsible for and the number of recs in each workflow status. Now, let's say Kim wants to see the actual account reconciliations within a workflow status. Say she wants to see the 11 key reconciliations that haven't been started yet. All she has to do is click on the number 11, and at the bottom, a new window appears that shows all 11 account recs. I'm going to expand it so it's easier to see. This is basically an Excel grid showing all 11 accounts with the most important pieces of information. I have the GL account here. You'll see the other GL segments next, like project code, business unit, and profit center, and they all come directly from the ERP system. Then you'll see the GL account description, the GL balance, the risk rating, and the account currency. I have all kinds of options to work with this list. I can sort on any column by clicking the header. I can filter this list by typing a value in the field header. Prepaid. I can even export to Excel, CSV, or PDF by clicking this button over here. So now let's get to the fun stuff and pull up an actual rec. Remember, these are all our key account reconciliations that haven't been started yet. Let's say Kim wants to complete the prepaid property taxes reconciliation. She starts by clicking on the edit hyperlink over here. And the June 2021 reconciliation for that account opens up. Let's take a look at the key sections of this rec. Up top here is the GL account segments and account description. The next section here is the prepaid schedule. We're seeing one line item per tax bill that's being amortized. Now, notice these icons for each item on the prepaid schedule. This lets Kim add or view additional information about the prepaid item. So if she clicks on the edit icon, and on this screen scrolls down, she has a section to add or view comments. And right below it, she has another section where she can attach or view almost any type of supporting item document. These documents can be almost any kind of file. In this case, it's the tax bill in Word format. So if I scroll back to the top and click on the View Schedule button, I now can see the full amortization schedule for this item. Now, the reason you're seeing multiple columns is if your company reports in multiple currencies, each column could represent a different currency amount. This account in my demo environment is just in US dollars, so all the columns are the same amount. Now I'm going to go back to the main screen. The next section I want to point out is the GL balance amount. This amount comes directly from your ERP system. We'll either import a trial balance flat file on a scheduled basis or connect directly to your ERP system and pull it on a scheduled basis. This ensures that your GL balance and the reconciliation is always accurate, and it eliminates the time you spend today entering them into spreadsheets. The next section here is the unidentified differences section. It's the difference between the GL balance and the prepaid schedule, which in this case is $5,000. I'll come back to how we eliminate that difference in a bit. As I scroll down, you'll see a comment section. The comment section you saw earlier was for a specific item on your prepaid schedule. This comment section can be used for any comments that aren't item specific. And the last main section on the face of the rec is for supporting documents. So just like with comments, the supporting document section I showed earlier was for a specific item on your prepaid schedule. This is the supporting document section you can use for anything else that isn't item specific. So what I've just shown are the main sections that Kim uses to complete the reconciliation each month. Now I want to show you the key information about how this reconciliation is set up in the system. I can see that by scrolling back up to the top and clicking the information icon next to the account description. Here you can see all the setup information. I'll go through just the main pieces. First, notice the certification threshold. It's currently set to $100 or 5%. This means that the difference between the GL balance and the prepaid schedule must be less than $100 or less than 5% for the system to let Kim mark the reconciliation as complete. If you have an account where the GL balance and supporting schedule must match to the penny, then make the setting 0. You could adjust this however you wish for each account. You'll also notice the assignment settings. This is where you'll see the workflow requirements for the account. In this example, Kim Wilson is the preparer and Pat Black is the approver. You'll also notice that they're required to complete their tasks monthly. These frequencies can be set to almost anything you wish, like quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. You'll also notice a section for purpose and reconciliation procedures. These are really valuable fields. If your purpose and reconciliation procedures are well written, and the person responsible for that rec is out of the office for a prolonged time, it's so much easier for a new employee to get up to speed and understand how to complete that rec. So that covers the main areas around the setup of the reconciliation. Now let's go back to the actual rec and complete it. Remember, our GL balance and prepaid schedule are different by $5,000. And the reason for this difference was a $5,000 invoice was received in mid-June, but the controller wants to amortize it over 5 months beginning in July. So we need to add it to the prepaid schedule. We could do that by clicking the Add Amortizable Item hyperlink. Now we just enter the item information into the form. So the invoice was for $5,000. We want the amortization to begin July 1st. We want it to end at the end of November. We're gonna, okay. You can put a description in here. $5,000 invoice. Okay. And before I hit save, I just want to show you one other feature. You could hit the View Schedule button here to see the amortization schedule that it created. So you can see by default it's a straight line, but you could actually go in and edit these amounts if you want by clicking the Edit All button here. You can see now that all these amounts are editable. I can go in and rekey amounts if I wanted to change how the amounts are being amortized. Okay, now you'll notice that the unidentified difference between the prepaid schedule and GL balance is 0. How nice is that? So now I finished preparing the reconciliation. I can scroll down to the bottom and mark it complete by clicking on my certification statement and then clicking on my certify button. So Kim Wilson has completed her piece of preparing the rec. Now let's log in as Pat Black to approve it. You'll notice that when Pat Black logs in, he has a dashboard as well showing all reconciliations he's responsible for. Any reconciliations that are awaiting his approval are in the prepared bucket. This is telling him that 4 recs are waiting for him to approve. So if I click on the 4, the window at the bottom shows the actual 4 recs. Here's the prepaid property taxes reconciliation that Kim Wilson just prepared. Pat just needs to click on the cert link to open it up. Pat can review the prepaid schedule, the comments and documents. He can even add additional comments and documents if he wants. And after reviewing, if he finds something wrong, he can click the reject button, pushing it back to the preparer. Or if all looks good, he can click the certification statement and the certify button, and that marks the rec as complete. So in this example, all looks good, so he'll certify that the reconciliation is complete. Now the rec is complete. The last thing I want to show is how an auditor can access the reconciliations directly. That's right, you can give your auditors direct access to the recs. They can pull all the supporting documents themselves and see a full audit trail of who signed off on the rec and when they did it. So I set up myself with auditor access, and I'll log into the system. You'll notice that I have a dashboard for account reconciliations as well, showing me the number of reconciliations in each workflow bucket. I'll click on the number 24 in the completed bucket, and the 24 recs are going to show up in the new window. Let me find the prepaid property taxes rec. That's the one that Pat Black just approved. I'll find it and open it up. Now, as an auditor, I have read-only access to this entire rec. I could review any comments and download any attached files. Now, if I click on the account information button up here, I can see all the setup information like certification thresholds, the purpose, and reconciliation procedures. I can also see which users prepared, approved, and reviewed this rec and the timestamp of when they did it. So that completes the A to Z demonstration of a prepaid reconciliation. What I want to point out now is how BlackLine can handle any type of balance sheet reconciliation. Out of the box, BlackLine has 10 account reconciliation templates that should handle any type of balance sheet rec. The list of templates is what I'm showing you here now. You just saw an example using the amortizable prepaid template. But notice this list can handle all kinds of other reconciliations. The subledger match can be used for reconciling your accounts receivable and accounts payable accounts. The bank account template can be used to reconcile your cash accounts. And the accruable template can be used to reconcile your bonus accrual or any other accrued expenses account. Now, in the rare event these out-of-the-box templates don't fit your needs, you can adjust them as needed. And it's super easy to do. Any accountant can update a template within just a couple of minutes. No IT member or coding is needed. So let's take a look at some examples of these other templates. Let's first look at an accrued template. This is an accrued legal fees account reconciliation. You'll notice that it looks very similar to the prepaid template used in the prior example. You have similar fields like GL balance, the unidentified difference, a section for comments, and a section for supporting documents. The big difference here is that your supporting item sections is designed for an accrual schedule rather than an amortization schedule. So here, the schedule is showing one line item for each retainer fee we've collected. And by clicking on the schedule icon next to any item, I can see the full accrual schedule for it. So that's what an accrual template looks like. Now let's take a look at another reconciliation template, the scheduled list template. This template is good for reconciling fixed asset accounts, which is the example I'm showing now. Now, instead of an accrual or amortization schedule section, we see a scheduled items section. You're seeing accumulated depreciation and cost amounts grouped by asset type for the fixed asset subledger. And it's comparing those amounts against the general ledger. In this case, the amounts match, so the reconciliation looks good. So these examples should give you a good idea of how reconciliations look and are completed in the system. The last piece I'd like to point out is that BlackLine comes with a robust dashboard and reporting engine. One example is a report to instantly see the status of all reconciliations, something that is really useful to an accounting manager or controller during the month-end close. Let's take a look at this report. So in my demo system, I have 779 reconciliations that are due this month. The bottom half of this report is a list of all 779 recs. I can see the GL account number, the GL account description, who's responsible for preparing and approving the rec, and when it's due. It also shows me the status of each rec, effectively telling me which recs haven't been started yet, which are in progress, and which are completed. I could also filter this list, sort it, or export it to Excel or PDF. So out of the box, the system comes with a catalog of reports and dashboards that you can use. Almost any data point in the system is reportable. It's very easy to add a field to an existing out-of-the-box report or build one from scratch. Any accountant can do it. No IT help or special coding is needed. So that concludes the balance sheet reconciliation module demo. I'll jump back to the slide deck now. So I want to go back to the auto certification capabilities that I mentioned earlier. The system can actually mark a reconciliation as complete if it meets any of the criteria listed on the slide. That means your team doesn't have to spend a second reconciling the account, saving a ton of time. The most common examples are an account with no current month activity, a zero balance, or an amortization schedule matching your GL balance. So that completes the overview of the account reconciliation module. Now let's jump to the second core module, the transaction matching module. When we're talking about transaction matching, we're talking about matching records from one data source to another. The most common example is your bank reconciliation. But note here that this slide contains other examples of how the transaction matching module can be used. For the most part, any situation where you're comparing records from Excel files using VLOOKUPs or XLOOKUP formulas, they can be automated using this module. So just to set the stage, this is how most companies do matching today. And it's a simple example of a bank rec. They usually take the general ledger or the subledger data and the bank data, and then they dump them out to an Excel file. Then they usually put them side by side and then match records one by one. So for example, I got check number 1791 for $467,000 on my bank statement. Hey, let me go find it on my GL. And when I find it, I'll either cross it off or change it to a specific color. Now, here's how it's done in BlackLine. BlackLine does all that manual matching for you. So this is a flow chart of how it works for a regular bank reconciliation. On a scheduled basis, BlackLine imports your bank and your GL transactions. It then runs the files through its matching engine, where pass rules are used to compare and match records from both files. Records that are successfully matched are put into the matches bucket, and records that are not successfully matched go into the exceptions bucket, where a user can research and then manually match the records. So let's take a look at some examples within the software. The first example I'll go through is a simple bank reconciliation. This is what it looks like using Excel. The left side is an export from the payment posting system, where you'll see payments made by each customer. The right side is your bank transactions, where the amounts are batch totals by day by payment type. Highlighted in blue are examples how we match these records. The first example are 3 American Express transactions on January 22nd that sum up to $50,000. They should be matched to the single bank American Express deposit on January 25th. The second example in blue are 4 cash check payments on January 22nd that sum up to $4,000. And they should be matched to the single cash check deposit that hit the bank on January 25th. So we call these two examples a many-to-one match. So let's see how the system can match these two data sets for us. After I've loaded both data sets into BlackLine, I could review them in this screen here. This is the same exact data you saw in the Excel screenshot from before. This screen is where we create the logic to match the records. BlackLine calls these pass rules. Remember that we have multiple records from the payment system matched to a single record on my bank statement. So I set that up in this section here. I'm effectively summarizing the customer payment transactions by day by payment type. Down here is where I tell the system the fields to compare when matching records. In this example, I set it up to compare the amount, transaction date, and payment type. I also added one caveat. The posting date of my bank transaction could actually be 3 days after my posting date of my customer payment transaction. So I set up the rule to match records as long as the transaction dates are within 3 days of each other. And I did that by using this range parameter here. One other thing to note. In this example, I only needed one pass rule to properly match records from the data sets. But I can actually create as many pass rules as I want. If I have a complex data set and I need to create 10 different pass rules to properly match all the records, I can easily do that. Okay, now let's go ahead and run the matching engine on these data files. Remember, all records that are matched go into one bucket, and the records that don't go into another. In this example, I purposely have records that don't match so you can see what both buckets look like. Now that it's complete, let's take a look at the records that successfully matched. What you're seeing here is a full audit trail of how and when the system matched these records. Let's take a look at the first set of matched records. In the middle are the two customer posted payments on January 28th that total $26,000. On the right is the bank Visa deposit for $26,000 on January 29th. Another example, let's look at these three Amex customer payments made on January 28th. They match to the Amex bank deposit on January 29th. Now, this screen does have a lot of data on it. To help sift through it, you can use these filter bars down here, okay, to hone in on a specific deposit. I could also export these records to Excel or a CSV file. But the main point I want to stress here is that no one had to spend any time matching these records. The system did all that work for you. The audit trail is here for you or an auditor to review if needed, but all that time manually doing this work goes away. Now let's go take a look at the bucket of records that didn't successfully match. Here's what the screen looks like. The left window contains all the customer posted payments that didn't have a matching record. The right window contains a bank statement deposit that didn't have a match. The bank deposit for $7,000 should match these four customer payments over here that I just selected. The system didn't automatically match it because the payment for Kira Gray was actually posted with an incorrect date of January 4th instead of January 24th. That's outside of our 3-day window set up in the pass rule. But that's okay, because this screen lets you manually match records as you wish. So right now, I have the $7,000 bank record selected and the 4 customer payment posted record selected. Notice this window up here. It tells me the sum of all the selected records and if there's any difference. This is a check I can use to make sure that records are a good match. Since it is, all I'll have to do to manually match is click the match button here. The records are removed from this screen and now exist in our matches bucket. Let's go back to my matches bucket and take a look. You'll see that my manual selection here is now black with a 1 in the parentheses. I'll click on it and we can see the records along with an audit trail on how they matched. Let me go back to the unmatched bucket to explain the remaining records. These other customer payments on January 31st don't have a match because the deposits don't hit the bank for a day or two afterwards. After they do hit the bank on probably February 1st or February 2nd, and those bank transactions are loaded into the system will then automatically match them for me. All right, so that covers the first example. Let's take a look at another example. This time we'll match records from 3 different data sources. We'll do a credit card statement to bank statement to GL subledger match. This Excel sheet is the data I'll use. You'll notice that some records, like the $50,000 and $62,000 transactions, are a 1-to-1 match. Other records, like the discount and merchant fees, need to be a many-to-1 match. Now let's see what it looks like in the system. So here's what the data looks like when I load it into the system. It's the exact same data from the spreadsheet. Now let's take a look at the pass rule I created to match these records. Here's the 1-to-1 pass rule. You'll notice I have 3 sections to set up because we have 3 different data sources. In this case, the rule is comparing the transaction date and amount. And I added an offset so the dates don't have to be exactly the same. They can be within 2 days of each other to mark records as matched. Here's the second pass rule I created. It's a many-to-one match, where I'm telling the system to group and sum transactions on my credit card statement and match them to a single transaction on my bank statement and general ledger. So I'll now go ahead and run the matching engine on these data sets. Here's the audit trail for the matched transactions. Now it's showing me 3 sections for each match: the credit card transaction, the bank transaction, and the general ledger transaction. Now let's go look at the unmatched transactions. In my unmatched bucket of records, I can see that the remaining credit card transactions match up to my bank statement transactions. When I click on the records, it tells me that the difference for the 2 data sets is 0 up here. But the records don't exist in my GL transactions. I probably need to book an entry to my general ledger. Now, after the entry is booked to my general ledger, the data will eventually be reloaded into the system, and either the system can automatically match these records, or I could use this screen to manually match them. So that covers my second matching example. The last example I'll show is reconciling a payroll transaction report against the general ledger. A lot of companies need to do this to make sure all payroll transactions are booked to the general ledger and booked to the right account. So here's an example of how that looks in Excel. The left is an export from my payroll system. The right side is an export from my general ledger. In this case, I want to compare the records by date by amount. It's a many-to-many match. Let's see how this looks in the system. Here's what the pass rule looks like. I'm grouping and summarizing all the transactions by date in both data sets, and then comparing the summarized amounts. If the summarized amounts are the same, then all the transactions that make up the summarized amounts will be marked as matched. Now I'll go run the matching engine. Here's the audit trail of the matched records. I can see how the system matched multiple records in my payroll register to multiple records in my general ledger. And that covers the 3 examples of matching transactions in BlackLine. I'll go back to the slide deck now. So that completes the overview of the transaction matching module. Now let's jump to the 3rd core module, the task management module. The task management module allows you to create checklists like month-end and audit lists. So it gives users an easy way to see all the tasks assigned to them, and it gives managers an easy way to see which tasks are completed and which are still in progress. And you can see other use cases on this slide. So let's take a look at some examples within the system. The most common use for the task management module is to create and maintain your month-end close checklist. Let's take a look at one in this system. Here's my company's month-end task list. Now I'm logged in as the system administrator so I can see all tasks for all employees. It's like an Excel sheet that shows me one record for each task. And I can see some of the important informational fields like the task description, the person responsible for completing the task, the calendar month-end date, and the number of days before or after the month-end date the task needs to be completed by. So in the first example here, the calendar date is June 30th, and the due days is 8. This means that the task needs to be completed by July 8th. Now I'm going to log in as Kim Wilson. She's an accountant, and I'll pull up what her task list looks like and show you a specific task. Now let's take a look at an actual task in this list and see what it looks like. I'll open up the Reconcile Inventory Accounts task. You'll notice it has a similar look and feel to a balance sheet rec. You got the task description up here at the top. It has a purpose and instructions sections, which is really useful if you have an employee leave and a new employee is taking over these tasks. You have a comment section here where you can enter any important notes or information you need to record for this task. And you have a supporting document section, which allows you to attach almost any type of file to this task. And we can see the setup information for this task by clicking on the information icon. This window shows me things like the due date and time of the task, how long the task should take to complete, who's responsible to complete it, who's responsible for approving it, and how often the task should be completed. Let's go back to the main screen. Now, after Kim Wilson finishes reconciling the inventory accounts, she'll come into this screen and mark the task as complete by clicking the certification statements. And clicking the Certify button. Now I just want to show you an audit trail of that action. If I go back into the task, and I click on the information icon, and take a look in the assignment settings, The audit trail and timestamp shows that Kim certified this task and it was completed on February 22nd. So that covers a month-end task example. Now I'd like to walk you through another good use case for this module, using it to track requests from your auditors. Here's what a document request list from your auditors may look like. It usually has the information in columns A through D. Column E contains the accountant responsible for gathering up the requested documents, and I added that field to this list. Now I can upload this spreadsheet into BlackLine to quickly create a task list with all these requests. Now I already completed this step before recording the demo, so I'll go straight to the imported list to show you what it looks like. Here's the imported list. Looks almost exactly like the Excel sheet I just uploaded. I'm logged in as the system administrator now, so I can see every audit request. Now I'll log in as Kim Wilson, and I'll show you how she can complete the request. So this shows that Kim has 7 audit requests assigned to her. One of them is to provide the bank statements. Let's open that one up. Now I already downloaded the bank statement from my bank's website, so all I need to do now is attach it to this task. So I'll do that in the supporting document sections here. Here's the bank statement that I just downloaded. All right, and now it's attached to this task. Now I'm going to mark this task as complete. Okay, now here's the really neat part. Instead of having to email the bank statement document to the auditor, I actually can give the auditor access to BlackLine with read-only access to this task. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So now I'm logged in as the auditor, and here's the audit task to collect the bank statement. So I'm going to open it up. And I have read-only access to this task. I can read the purpose and instructions. I can download the bank statement and review it. I can also review any notes or additional details keyed into the comment section. And I can also go into this screen up here to see who completed this task and the date that they completed it. So in a nutshell, it provides self-service for your auditors. It really should save your team time as well as the auditors, which should result in a lower audit bill. So the last item I'd like to show you in the task module is its robust reporting. It has some very powerful reports for your management team. They can quickly see all tasks, which are completed and which are not. So let's go to that reporting section now. Here's 4 reports a manager or controller can use to manage the month-end close tasks or audit tasks. Let's first take a look at the audit reports. This report shows me every audit request, whether it's been completed or not, who's responsible for completing it, and when it's due. And I could sort the data as needed by just clicking on the headers. I could filter it by typing into the filter criteria box. Or I can export it to Excel. The other audit report groups the data, making it easier to understand. Here I group the data by user, by status. So I can quickly see that Tom Green has 56 audit requests assigned to him and the number of those in each workflow status. I have two other reports that are similar, but just show the month-end close tasks instead of the audit tasks. Here I'm seeing every month-end close task in the company, what the task status is, who's responsible for completing the task, and when it's due. Here's a report showing the same information, but groups it by user, by status. So I can see that Tom Green has 103 month-end close tasks assigned to him, and the total amount within each workflow status. So the important piece here is that you may be having recurring status meetings with your team or emailing your team for task updates on a regular basis. That takes up a lot of your valuable time throughout the month. With these reporting capabilities, the need for meetings and emails should go away, giving you back that time to work on other activities. So that completes the demonstration of the task management module. I'll go back to the slide deck now. I wanted to finish up showing some of BlackLine's existing clients. The software is used by big and small companies across every industry. There's case studies available on many of them. Two in particular on this slide, SiriusXM and Domino's, talk about how they use BlackLine's transaction matching module to reconcile millions of credit card payments each month. That just gives you a sense of how powerful the tool is. And that concludes today's webinar. I hope it was informative and helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at info@revelwood.com. Thanks, everyone.